So last month, we took a look at some key aspects behind how and why you should become crystal clear about your ideal customer profile. And we heard from Al Tepper of Tepfu, an excellent guest speaker slot, who provided some great insights on the ICP, on the ideal customer profile. And we left everyone with the challenge: is your ICP working for you? If not, what are you going to do about it? This month, we take a bit more of a look into individual accountability and joint responsibility. So driving accountability through visibility, clarity, and commitment in our businesses. And I'm going to take you through a couple of concepts and tools to help. As always, they're not necessarily the complete solution, but they should help in our thinking and taking steps in the right direction. It doesn't matter really where we are on the scale up journey, whether we're starting out or whether we're quite a long way along it, they will help in our thinking. And running a small and medium-sized business, we all know, is that exhilarating journey, but it does come with a unique set of challenges. And if you pause for a moment, maybe let's just pause and just, how would you define what a business is? I'll just give you a second just to think about that. What is a business? I'm sure Rebecca, from her legal background, is including the word legal entity somewhere in her definition. But you may have come up with something along the lines of a collection of people working together to delight customers profitably. Something along those lines. And one of the most critical aspects of managing a successful business, therefore, is getting people to work effectively together. And we want to encourage that individual accountability and joint responsibility, so that it's not all on our shoulders all the time to be telling people what to do or highlighting when people need to pull their socks up. And in order to do that, we need to have everybody's commitment, which means they need that visibility and clarity of where we're going. And those core pillars, if you like, give everybody the intent, and then not only help to drive the growth, but also foster that positive culture and environment for that long-term success. And if we don't have clarity on roles and accountabilities, then we're in danger of confusion and things getting missed. And perhaps to illustrate that, here's a little story. Some of you may have heard this story before. It's about 4 people called Anybody, Everybody, Somebody, and Nobody. And it goes like this. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job, and everybody thought that anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. And it ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. So a fun little story, but obviously the takeaway is, we want our team to be truly productive, then we've got to be sure that we're clear on those roles and accountabilities. But equally, individual accountability without that idea of shared responsibility isn't the whole answer either. And otherwise we get a situation a little bit like this, where, you know, it's not my problem sort of thing. I've done my bit. So we want to address those things. And we looked at addressing some of these themes through at a ScaleUp Club a couple of times ago around creating cohesive teams, and this model from Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a cohesive team. And we looked at the ideas of trust, conflict, that constructive debate, commitment, accountability, and results through focus on shared results, all playing a key part. And we also looked at how the Smart 90 rhythm, and doing that 90-day planning supported by the business rhythm in between, supports building cohesive and really engaged teams. And it does that largely through building shared intent and establishing that visibility, clarity, commitment, and accountability. And getting to accountabilities and getting them clear in our businesses is crucial right from the very start. And the golden rule is to bear in mind that if we've got more than one person that thinks they're accountable for something, then no one is. And I'm going to take you through a 1-page tool very quickly to help assign accountabilities, and then link it to a variation of the traditional org chart. And what these tools are designed to do is to help us to think about the structure of the business as it is now and how we want it to be, identifying roles as we move forwards. So the first focuses on making sure we've got the right people in the right seats at the top of the organization. And it's based on a functional accountability chart that was developed by Vern Harnish and his team. And this is about the right people doing the right things. And our version of this framework lists the key functions that exist in every key business under 5 headings. So essentially, bring it, which is bring in the business, do it, so that whatever you do that delivers it, count it, the business administration side of things, but then also the lead it and the enable it functions. And bearing in mind that most of us are running small and medium-sized businesses, it might be we've still got to do all of these functions. Doesn't matter how big the business is, we've still got to do all of these things, even if we've only got a few people. So we might be wearing several hats. So I'm going to take you through this step by step as to how to use it, and we can share this framework afterwards if people would like to have it. But as a quick summary, you see down the left-hand side the key functions, and then 4 further columns looking at who's accountable, the leading indicators of that role, the lagging indicators, but then also would we enthusiastically rehire that person in the role? Have we got the right person in that seat? So step 1, and any specific functions to the left-hand side to that list. And this is where you tailor it to your specific business and exactly how your business needs to operate. So under bring it, you might have marketing and sales, and then within each of those, you might have 1 or 2 key functions such as new lead generation and client retention. Step 2 then is to get the team to name who they think is accountable for each function. And if you've got a number of senior managers or other people within the business, it's a great thing to get them to do that individually, so on their own rather than a collective group, and then compare the results. And this can sometimes lead to really interesting discussions where we think, well, maybe we've got 2 people that we think are accountable for that particular role, or maybe there's some gaps or whatever. It'll very quickly highlight any confusion that you might have over roles and accountabilities. And then the step 3 is to ask yourself 4 questions. So about that list. So do we have more than 1 person in a seat? And you can see, maybe you'll remember that I had Melanie and Louise in the same box for client retention. Is somebody in too many seats? You probably spotted my name on several of those. So how am I going to address that? Do we have any empty seats? There was a question mark, nobody accountable for IT. So the 4th question there, of course, is what are we going to do about it? So what? So we've identified that. What are we going to do about it? But that helps us to start that thinking. And then as we move across, essentially what we're looking to do is to list 3 leading KPIs for that function, for each function, not too many, one or 2. So what are the behaviors, the leading KPI really, what are the behaviors that we're looking for in that role that we would know the role was being done well on a daily basis? And try and separate out the individual for that. So if we know Caroline's in that role, not what does Caroline do each day, but actually what does that role need to be done? What does good look like for that role? Of course, would be the same thing as far as Caroline's concerned, but it may not be as far as other individuals would be. So separate the individuals out from the KPIs. And then think about the results, the lagging KPIs. So we've had the behavioral, what sort of things do we need to do? So make X number of phone calls or whatever, but what's the lagging, what's the actual result we want from that role? And those of you that want to go a little bit further with this, it's quite a good balance check or double check to go through your financial statements, so your profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow statements, and check off line by line item and make sure that you're not missing something in those accountabilities and the KPIs. Because if you haven't got somebody responsible for a key line item on your P&L, then what's going to happen? It's not going to get done in the way that you want to. So that's the chart, and the final column there is the killer question: have we got the right person? And we've developed something that we call our board rate, which is to help us to know whether we should enthusiastically rehire that person, whether we think we've got the right person in there, to just add a little to it other than gut feel, and are they hitting the targets that we've set on those metrics. And that board rate stands for behavior, aptitude, understanding, and desire. So are they displaying the behaviors that we would expect that person, that meet with our values and all of those things? Have they got the aptitude? Are they actually able to do it? Do they have the understanding of the importance of that role and how it fits in with everything else that we're doing, where we're going? And lastly, but very importantly, do they have the desire? And it could be that somebody falls down on one or more of those areas, and that gives us clues as to how we might address it. And so that's the actual table chart, if you like, but then we can translate that into what you might think of as a more traditional organizational chart, but we call this the accountability org chart. So it's like a traditional one, but you'll notice that we're including some key accountabilities within there. So one or two key descriptors of what that role is about. The other thing you might notice is that it's upside down. Traditional one, of course, goes top to bottom, and there's a good reason for that. And primarily that's because really the rest of the organization is there to support the customer facing roles, not the other way around. So it helps us to really think about the fact that our role is to support all those customer facing people. And it also makes it a little bit more like a tree where the roots are at the bottom and supporting the branches and the leaves. So we like to turn the traditional chart upside down. It helps avoid all of those issues you have about, oh, he's higher up the chart than me, he's a different level, and that's not right, and all of those things. It helps a little bit out. But the important bit there also is we capture one or two key roles, key accountabilities within the roles. And early on in our journey, we may have not very many different names in those boxes, but all those functions still have to be done. And what we can then use is we can say, well, if that's the org chart for now, the accountability org chart for now, at the next stage of our scale up journey, what should it look like then? So we can draw it out and map it out as we think it should look like, with the roles in there and key accountabilities, but not necessarily individual names. Again, try and separate it out from the names. And now we've now got a then and a now kind of chart, and we can start to say, what do we need to do to transition from where we are now to there? Are we going to have to recruit for those roles? Are we going to have to develop somebody internally for it? So that helps you to think about where we go next. So that's essentially the two ideas there, the functional accountability chart table, if you like, and also then the accountability org chart. And both frameworks should help us to answer that question. Do we have the right people in the right seats doing the right things? And would we enthusiastically rehire that person into the role that they're doing now? And where are we going in the future? And in the competitive landscape that is all of our businesses, establishing that visibility, clarity, accountability is a continuous journey. We're never done, like most things. So it's always about going back and thinking about it and making small improvements. Link it back with our Smart 90 planning process, and that can really then help to develop that organizational culture of real engagement, where we're motivated and dedicated to achieving team results and the company's goals, positioning us for long-term success. And remember that accountability is the glue that ties it all together and ensures that we've got the commitment that leads to those tangible results. So that's all I wanted to say on that. What I'd love to do now is to introduce Rebecca, who's our guest speaker this time around. And I'm delighted to have Rebecca Widdowson, who is also a new member, recently joined ScaleUp Club in the last few weeks. Rebecca's the managing partner of Hallmark, Whatley, Hulme, but is also the chair of governors at Tudor Grange Academy in Worcester, trustee of Herefordshire and Worcestershire Sports Partnership, and trustee of Rowlands Trust, and vice president of Worcester Rugby Football Club. So lots of things going on. Really looking forward to hearing a few words from Rebecca. So Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I went to a presentation last week where one of the presenters finished his little presentation just before a lawyer came on, and his introduction was, well, nobody likes a lawyer, do they? But here's the person on next. So sorry about that. I'm hoping not the case here. But if you could go over to the next slide, Kevin, that would be great. So yeah, as Kevin said, I've got quite a lot of things going on in my life at the moment, but I earn money out of being managing partner of Hallmark Hulme LLP, which is the legal entity that operates Hallmark Whatley Hulme. And within that business, I have a number of hats, including being the main compliance officer and also probate solicitor. all of the other things that I do are to add what I consider value to my life and hopefully value to the community that I come from. My motto is always to put more in than you get out, and I hope very much that that is the case. I'm particularly proud of being a founder member of the women's rugby team at Worcester, which is now over 30 years old. The team still plays out of Sixway Stadium. It's a Premiership professional outfit. The men's team collapsed, but the women's team goes strong. And to reflect upon those achievements of that team over the last 30 years is probably one of my proudest moments. I also, involved in rugby, ended up being invited to be one of the first female vice presidents of Worcester Rugby Club, which is over the road from Sixways. It's still an amateur setup. That's still an evolving role, but I have to say, if anybody's involved in sport or any of these sorts of alternative roles, it is amazingly rewarding. This is not about personal accountability. This is just about the fact that I think if you put in more than you get out, you end up helping so many people, and it's a fulfilling exercise. I also, the next slide, Kevin, is a bit of my fundraising that I do when I have a bit of spare time. And so I've done cycling being my predominant sport, London to Paris, Brighton to London, and then the next slide, which is what I finished off with this year, is a tour of Norfolk, and it literally was a tour of Norfolk in one day. It was 200 miles. It was really hot, and my journey from being pretty much non-active 15 years ago to being able to do that is something that I've set as a goal for me, and I hope it brings actually quite a lot of learning to my business, that setting those goals, setting those targets, being accountable for those things, making sure that you're transparent and somebody, you really own it, is extremely important. If you could go to the next slide, Kevin. So my firm, where I earn my money, we are an old firm, so I'm not a new setup. I'm not necessarily an entrepreneur in the sense that many of you are entrepreneurs. I came into this firm a number of years ago and became a managing partner over 10 years ago. We have merged with two other practices. We are now over 40 staff and we turn over £2 million a year. I think from a personal accountability and a joint responsibility point of view, what I've learned in the last 18 months since we merged with Whatley, Weston and Fox has been the steepest learning curve of my professional career and in my business career. What Kevin was saying earlier about actually identifying roles and putting people in those roles was probably my biggest mistake. My biggest mistake was doing it almost all single-handedly, or certainly it felt single-handed at times, and not allocating enough of those roles to other people, taking on too much, over-committing in one sense, and not being necessarily able to deliver. What I also learned, and it's something that is probably a thread throughout my whole career, is accepting when you've made a mistake. Personal accountability is all about saying sorry, and also recognizing and taking responsibility for mistakes. Nobody goes through life without making a mistake, but blaming somebody else, excusing it, almost never works. My client-facing work, I'm actually a litigator by trade. For many years I was a litigator, so I was dealing with people in extremely stressful situations, even when it was commercial litigation. I learned very, very quickly that the consistent message is make sure that you own something, and if you don't get it right, that you accept that you haven't got it right and you move forward. Clients will not accept you trying to blame somebody else when it's quite clearly your responsibility. Your team will not accept you blaming them for something not going right. When you learn from your mistakes and getting input and feedback from your team to say, what have we done right, what have we done wrong, the most valuable learning experiences in business. And then be prepared to change. and my role as chair of governors at Tudor Grange, recent experience is that they were, I don't know how many of you are involved in education, but the gap in attainment between boys and girls is massive. And each school will probably have a plan or a target to narrow that gap. And something we did at Tudor Grange didn't work. And the teaching staff accepted that, realised it didn't work, looked at doing something differently in order to try and achieve better outcomes. So be prepared to change. And then I think, I don't know how much more you want me to talk about this, Kevin, but this is our recent advert. And I think we are proud to be different because we want to listen to our clients. And I hope that's our USP, is that you get somebody like me dealing with your legal query, not somebody who's anonymous. So there's a little bit of background about me anyway.
Brilliant. That's super. Thank you very much indeed. And I love the fact that you highlighted the personal accountability and admitting when we make a mistake, and that's the foundation of that. If we go back to that pyramid I showed with the 5 behaviors of a dysfunctional team, trust being absolutely the bottom, and it starts with us. And if we can't be seen to admit to our own mistakes, how do we expect other people to do that and therefore move forward? So very good. Let's see let's see if we've got any questions for Rebecca from the room. Anybody got a burning question?
I'd just ask, how on earth do you fit everything in?
Yeah.
No, but quite seriously, I've just taken on a role as chair of the CIPD for Worcester, alongside the business and teenagers and everything else, and a podcast that I host. And just trying to fit everything in is absolutely killing me. Have you got any tips for it?
Yeah, it is. I have to say it is a challenge. I am an early riser, so it does allow me to do quite a lot in the beginning of the day. If that's not naturally your sleep pattern, and then that's not necessarily an answer. I think it is all around the planning. It is all about diary management and being then able to say no when you really can't do it, and don't let people down at the last minute. If you can avoid it, sometimes it's unavoidable, but plan it in. And be able to say no, and be prepared not to see your husband very much, because apparently on my birthday, my husband put my picture up in the living room and told my children, "There's your mother."
Oh gosh.
I think there was a little underlying message somewhere.
That's fine. I don't mind that.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else got a burning question?
I guess sorry, it's Dominic here. I guess that personal touch, Rebecca, of, your clients get to speak to you and senior folk. That's what we do as well as consultants. And, we're quite small, but we win quite big clients because they talk to like decision makers. How do you like market that? Like, we talk about that, but I don't really know how to position that in our kind of more kind of front and center, if that makes sense.
I think I think it may be easier in the legal market, because the legal market has moved quite considerably towards big anonymous factories of people who are maybe managing property transactions, and you don't get that personal touch. So for us, it's very much about marketing us as individuals, us as people, and that's been quite easy to do because we can differentiate what we do from those other businesses. But I think it's very important to have your face, your contact. You're not going to be an anonymous individual in a call room or in a call centre. It's you. You've got the knowledge. You've got the experience. You can deliver that service to the client. So,
yeah. Thank you.
Very good. I think we're probably done with our questions. Last chance.
I've got a quick one. I've
Yeah.
got a quick one. Hi, Gildas from Dial Geek in Bristol. How did you manage to do that many miles in one day on a bike? It's amazing. 200 miles. That's like 12 hours on the bike. That's unbelievable.
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's flat. Is lying, because there are parts of it that aren't flat. It was hard, and if you read anything about endurance athletes, and don't get me wrong, I'm not an endurance athlete. I'm just a silly 52-year-old who likes sitting on a bike and going for a long way. But anything about endurance athletes will say that they'll train to a certain level, but it is the mental determination that gets them through the last 25% of whatever it does, and that is true, because it was so much more mental than physical in the end. It was just hanging on by my fingers, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Well done. That's an amazing achievement.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. We have to put you in touch with David Lyons, actually somebody else we know who likes his endurance cycling. He's another cycling nut, I think. Yeah, in terms of 200 miles in a day, that's certainly a long way. Right, good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into our breakout.